The morning of my sister's wedding began with the sound of trucks backing up across the gravel at Hawthorne Manor and the smell of damp cut grass. I stood under the portico with a paper cup of coffee cooling too fast in my hands and watched the caterers unload silver Cambros in crates of glassware like they were building a city from boxes. The sky was the pale blue of a pressed shirt, high and cloudless, and the elm trees lining the drive flicked long shadows across the stone. I should have been excited. I should have felt the lightness other sisters feel when they zip each other into silk and whisper, "You've got this," into a veil. Instead, there was a small, steady flame under my ribs that wouldn't go out. "My sign is crooked," the florist said to no one, then to me because I was closest. "Will you hold this?" She thrust a bundle of eucalyptus at me and fussed with the chalkboard arrow that said, "Ceremony this way." I held the leaves and breathed their cold sweetness and thought, a sign can be straightened. Other things take more work. I am Marin Calloway. I am the older sister by 3 years. My sister, Leela, is the bride. Leela's dress, according to my mother, cost more than my first car. The groom is Graham Barlow, eldest son of the Barlow family, who owned 3 car dealerships and a winter house in Vale. Hawthorne Manor is an estate in the Hudson Valley, with a ballroom the color of champagne and a lake that pretends to be natural. I own a set of good wrenches, the blueprints to buildings most people forget to notice, and a patient tolerance for men who think I can't read a balance sheet. I do not own a single dress that makes people gasp, though my shoes, low, clean, and meant for work, have carried me further than I ever thought I'd go. "Marin, where are you?" My mother's voice arrived before she did, sharp and bright as cutlery. She wore navy, of course she wore navy, the color of control, and pearl drops that clicked gently when she walked. "Don't hover by the service entrance. Guests will start arriving and it looks provincial." I'm not hovering. I offered the florist's eucalyptus back. The florist didn't take it, her hands full of twine, so I tucked it into a galvanized bucket. "I'm helping." "You had your chance to help," my mother said, smoothing the front of her dress with the same motion she used to erase smudges from windows when we were kids. "The planner has everything handled. Go inside and get dressed. We need you out of the way." Out of the way. It settled on me like a second skin. I watched my mother walk off toward the main doors, her heels finding the only stones that didn't wobble, and then I looked past the florist and the chalkboard and the stretch of lawn that rolled down to the lake. Gold chairs, white runner, the arch with its veil of flowers, the promise of a clean timeline on a clean day. "Can you bring those centerpieces in when you're done?" the florist asked. "It's just," she looked over her shoulder, "they've been on us all morning about placement and I'm short 2 hands." "I can do it," I said. "Where do you want them?" She rattled off a list of table numbers, and I carried 3 glass cylinders at a time into the ballroom that smelled faintly of lemons and fresh vacuuming. The chandeliers were lit already, even though the sun was bright enough to make the floor glitter. Across the room, the planner, a woman in a blush jumpsuit and a thin microphone clipped to one ear, clicked through a checklist while a pair of interns taped down cords like they were restraining snakes. She saw me and did a quick professional smile that included me, and then slid on. At the back of the ballroom, near the double doors that led to the service corridor and kitchen, 2 round tables were tucked behind a column, slightly too close to the swinging door. A rectangle of tape marked 14 on the floor. A gray plastic tub of extra napkins sat underneath, half hidden by a linen. Someone had written staff staging on the tape with a Sharpie, then crossed it out and written overflow above it. I set the vases on the nearest table. I counted the chairs. 8. The table beside it had 7, one pushed away to make room for a trash can. Heat rose up my neck. I looked for the place cards, finding them in a shallow tray on a chair. I flicked through until I found my name, Marin Calloway, in a thin gold script that curled at the ends like it didn't want to let go. Table 14. By the kitchen. A cart rattled past me, stacked with plates and spoon sleeves. The door swung. The kitchen exhaled hot air and the shouted rhythm of a brigade already behind. A prep cook swore as a bag of microgreens skidded toward the line. I slid to the side, and the server shot me an apologetic look, eyebrows up, and then the door swayed closed, and I was left with the steady bump of the cart diminishing down the corridor. Someone had crossed me out of the family tables and slotted me by the swinging door. "We have our reasons," my mother would say, which usually meant she had her reasons. Maybe they needed the space up front for the Barlows. Maybe they thought I wouldn't mind. Maybe... Marin. The planner appeared like a pink shadow. "Hi, so, sorry, family table is full and the Barlow cousins flew in last minute. You'll be at 14. It's still a great table, still totally part of the party, just..." She glanced toward the door where a server, hips, and a chandelier would be a constant parade. "We'll keep the door propped for service so it doesn't hit anyone." "I see that," I said. The planner nodded brightly and pivoted away, already speaking into her mic. I should have felt foolish. I should have let it go like so many other things I've let go for the sake of a smooth afternoon. Except nothing about my throat felt smooth. I walked to the front of the room where the head table stretched like a white runway. Name cards in little gold clips. Leela, Graham, Mother, Father, Barlow, Maid of Honor, Best Man. No Marin. I looked up. Mirrors reflected the room back at itself. The air hummed with preparations. I could have said nothing. I could have taken my seat by the kitchen. I could have absorbed the heat of resentment and kept my face composed like my mother taught me. But a different compass had been quietly recalibrating inside me for months. It had started the first time I traced my finger down a deed and realized numbers could be doors, that they opened when you had the right key. "Don't touch the head table, sweetheart." My mother's reflection slid across the mirror, and then she was beside me, her hand light but firm on my forearm. Up close, I could smell her perfume, lilies and winter air. "The cards are set. The Barlows are particular. So I'm at a staff table, by the kitchen. Don't be dramatic." She looked past me, toward the arch visible through the tall windows where the ceremony would be. "You weren't in the wedding party. There's a flow." I laughed. It came out like a cough. I wasn't in the wedding party because Leela wanted the photos to be even, and an extra bridesmaid would make the numbers odd. It's Leela's day. And the 4 words were a stone she'd been holding for weeks. "We want no trouble. Be gracious." I thought of all the times my mother had told me to be gracious. When I didn't get invited to sleepovers. When I got into a better college than the Barlow boy and then didn't go because the money wasn't there and I'd taken a job instead. When I bought my first ugly little house with a broken porch and a nervous cellar and everyone said, "You're a girl, it's a bad street." I had smiled and been gracious. And later, when I sold that house and bought 2 more, I had been gracious again and not said, "I told you so." "Gracious," I repeated, and put my hands in the pockets of my dress because I didn't trust them not to shake. The dress, a deep green, was one I'd chosen for the way the fabric held me without needing me to be anything I wasn't. My mother squeezed my arm. "Fix your hair. The ceremony starts in an hour." She was gone before I could answer, her attention drawn to a delivery of aisle lanterns that she'd decided were her jurisdiction. I stood alone at the head table, breathing through a chest that felt 2 sizes too small. "Do you work here?" a voice asked. A man in a tight suit hovered, holding 2 chargers and that particular expectation people carry when they think you're paid to help them. "I don't work here, but there's an outlet behind that curtain." He pivoted, relief already erasing me from his mind. I watched him go and wanted to say, "I do work here, actually, in my own way, in ways you don't see." The deed had arrived in my email at 8:31 a.m., with a subject line from my attorney, "Recording confirmation, Hawthorne Manor." The PDF sat on my phone like a heart I wasn't ready to tell anyone about. Sable and Pine LLC, my holding company, had finalized the purchase last Tuesday. The seller, a 3rd-generation owner with a son who wanted to turn the manor into condos, had resisted and then yielded when the numbers and the loan and the timing aligned. I had walked the property quietly for months, smiling like a guest while asking the operations manager about the age of the boilers and pretending to be in love with ghostly crown moldings. It wasn't a secret because I was ashamed. It was a secret because I wanted the reveal to be clean and kind. I had imagined, in a softer version of today, a toast at the end of the night. Leela's laughter already spilling, Graham's tie loosened, my mother's shoulders dropping for the first time in days. I would say, I wanted your first day to be somewhere that would always be yours, not just a place you rented for hours. And I would hand my sister a folder with the deed inside, and watch her mouth, "Are you serious?" while the crowd went warm and loose around us. But then, they put me by the kitchen. "Marin!" Leela's voice turned my head. She was at the top of the stairs that led to the bridal suite, pink and satin and newly threaded with diamonds. Her hair was a perfect river over her shoulder. She descended the last 3 steps as if she were testing an ocean for temperature. "Do you like the arch? It's a little extra, but Graham's mom insisted."
"It's beautiful," I said, and it was. There was no point denying it. "You look," I searched for the right word, "like yourself, but brighter." She smiled then, and for a second she was the girl who used to steal my socks and fill my bed with confetti on my birthday. "I wish you'd done the suite with us," she said, "but you hate that stuff." "I don't hate it," I said. "I just didn't want to be in anyone's way." "Mom said you were being sulky." She said it lightly, but her eyes slipped to the side. "Ignore her. Ignore everyone. Just be chill today, okay?" I thought of the seating card, the gray tub under the table, the door that would swing into my shoulder all night if I leaned wrong. "Sure," I said. "I can be chill." "Good." She squeezed my hand. "Graham's parents are particular. They paid for a lot." Her voice dropped. "We didn't put you at the front because they wanted close family by them. It's not personal." "I'm family," I said, and surprised myself with how tired my voice sounded. "Of course you are," she said, but she was already being pulled into a conversation with the planner about timing. "You'll be at a good table," she called over her shoulder. "It's not like you care about this stuff." I watched her go. The little flame under my ribs licked higher. It wasn't about centerpieces or head tables. It was about what you tell a person they are worth when you seat them next to the trash can because someone richer wanted their chair. The ceremony moved like a movie, with all the cuts smoothed out. Guests arrived in a spill of chiffon and navy suits. There was a hush, the long inhale of people readying their faces to be beautiful on command. The music lifted. The Barlows took their positions like pewter figurines on a mantle. Graham's smile had that borrowed look men get when they're trying to look like the future. Leela came down the aisle on my father's arm, and I felt something inside me soften despite itself. She was luminous. She was a girl who had become a woman, and then, in that moment, an artwork made of sunlight, and I loved her with the kind of ache that makes you wish you could be 2 people at once. When the officiant said the words, "By the power vested in me," and everyone cheered, I cheered too. I let the sound roll through me and watched my sister kiss a new last name onto her mouth. I let the confetti of lavender toss and caught one on my tongue. For 10 minutes, I forgot Table 14 and every time I'd been asked to make myself smaller. Cocktail hour hit its stride with 1,000 tiny shrimp on 1,000 tiny forks, and I found myself standing near a hedge with a glass of something sparkling that buzzed like a phone on a countertop. A server tripped on the edge of the patio, and I caught the top tray, steadying it, saving a dozen deviled eggs from a greasy fate. "Thanks," he panted, pale with the adrenaline of almosts. He was young, with a too-big vest and a tattoo behind one ear that looked like a safety pin. "They told me not to go near the Barlows with eggs, stink, and cameras." He rolled his eyes. "You'll do fine," I said. "If anyone is rude, remove their fork and stand there until they soften." He laughed, then sobered. "Are you here with family?" "My sister, the bride." "Then you should be inside getting your photo taken," he said, as if this were a law. "They're doing the family staircase shots." I looked across the lawn. The planner was shepherding clusters of people up the manor steps, arranging them like bouquets. I could feel the shape of the photo already printed without me. My phone buzzed and I pulled it from my bag. Recording confirmation, Hawthorne Manor, the subject line still glowing like a lighthouse I hadn't yet turned towards. I opened the email again, read the legal description again, the block and lot and serial number that, to most eyes, looked like a tangle of unpoetry. To me, it sang. It said, "You did this." It said, "Keys." Marin, my father, plumped with pleasure and champagne, appeared with a Barlow on either side like he had acquired shoulder ornaments. "Where do you run off to? The photographer is asking." "I'm here. I was helping a server." "You and your projects," he said, not unkindly. He kissed my forehead, then glanced at the men flanking him as if they might appraise this gesture. "Come on then, let's get the official one." The staircase was a river of relatives. I stood where I was told. The photographer placed our elbows and our smiles. When she said, "One more," I remembered to unlock the muscles of my jaw. I could hear the clink of kitchen pans through the wall. Leela leaned down from the step to whisper, "Thank you for being here. I know this isn't your favorite thing." "Being with you is," I said, surprising myself again. We moved into the ballroom like a tide taking shape. Guests found their tables. There were those little uncertain moments when people hovered between chairs and plates, greedy for a clue about where they belonged. I headed for table 14 because I was nothing if not capable of following a sign. But as I rounded the column, I saw a woman in a lavender fascinator already in what would have been my chair, sliding her bag onto the seat back. She looked at my place card, then at me, then flipped the card slightly to angle toward the table's center. "Do you mind?" she asked, in a voice that assumed I did not. "We were told to make room for the cousins." "Oh, is this yours?" She tapped the Marin card and smiled with teeth too white for comfort. "We can squeeze." She didn't mean we. A server wheeled a plastic bin past with the thunder of dishes. The door swung, nudging my hip lightly as if to remind me it would keep doing that until midnight. "I'll figure it out," I said, because that is a sentence my body has memorized so well I could say it in my sleep. I took my card and stepped back into the hall. The manager, a man named Elliot, with a tie that could strangle a horse, stood at a side station scratching notes on a clipboard. "Hi, I'm supposed to be at 14, but it seems to be overflowing. Can we add a chair?" "We're at capacity," he said without looking up. "Fire code." "I said you added 2 chairs to 6, so the code already called you once today." I lifted my chin toward the blocked exit. He glanced, irritated, then grudgingly signaled a server to remove the extra chairs. "Happy?" he asked, shortly, the life from his voice like a light being tossed asponse to the wall.
"No," I said, pleasantly, "but safer." I slid my place card onto the linen. Elliot's eyes tracked the motion. Something in his gaze tightened. "Your family?" he asked, and the way he said family sounded like a diagnosis. "I am," I said. "I'm Marin." "Ah." He checked the list on his clipboard. "We've been told to direct all requests through the mother of the bride." "I'm making sure your exit isn't blocked," I said. "You can direct safety concerns through me." "And you are?" he asked again, sharper. I could have said the truth right then. I could have told him that we were, in a technical and legally binding sense, colleagues. I could have shown him the email. Instead, I smiled. Someone who knows what a fire door is. If he'd laughed, maybe that would have been the end of it. He didn't laugh. He tightened his jaw and moved down the line, pinching napkins at every seat by fraction of an inch, as if accuracy at that scale made anything right. The MC's voice poured up from the speakers. "Please welcome for the first time Mr. and Mrs. Graham Barlow." Applause detonated. Leela and Graham floated through the doors to the head table. As they passed, Leela looked toward me for a second and did a little invisible shrug, the kind you do when your dress is too tight under the arms and you're not sure you can lift your fork to your mouth later. I smiled back big and bright and made a note to cut her out of anything that pinched. Dinner began in courses that Kitchen could just barely keep pace with. Bread, salad, a plate of chicken that had learned to be tender. At my table, the newly right-sized table 14, I sat with a collection of relatives and strangers whose conversational settings ranged from muted to loud about college. The door hit my chair twice, despite the wedge Elliot had jammed beneath it. I scooted in further until my knees pressed the linen like I was trying to swim under the table. "Marin," my Aunt Claire leaned around a towering arrangement of white roses. "Tell them about your, properties?" "It's boring," my mother said from 3 tables away before I could answer. "She flips little houses. It's not dinner talk. I restore them, and I hold some. It's what I love." "Isn't it dangerous?" the lavender fascinator asked, now somehow part of our orbit. "All those neighborhoods?" She bit a piece of bread like it offended her. "The houses or the neighborhoods?" I asked softly. She didn't answer. My father, sensing a conversational pothole, stood to toast. He told the story about Leela insisting on wearing rain boots to preschool. He told a joke that made the Barlows smile politely. He did not mention my name. I swallowed and let the bread dissolve on my tongue like an aspirin. The best man was earnest. The maid of honor wept. Someone's phone rang in the middle in a marimba dance and then stopped. "She really landed on her feet with Graham," a cousin murmured. And even though I knew he meant it kindly, as a compliment to both of them, it hit me like a dull bell. The language of landing makes it sound like falling first is inevitable. Halfway through the main course, a server came to a hush at my shoulder. "Ma'am, we're short on champagne flutes. Would you mind—" He gestured at the door and the hallway beyond, as if I might be hiding glassware under my chair. "Would I mind what?" I asked. "We have extra in storage, but the Barlows ask that guests not see the back of house. Elliot said to ask, His gaze pinged between my face and the floor, as if a word had fallen and he couldn't find it. "Elliot said to ask me to go get the flutes," I supplied. "No, I mean, he said you know the place." He winced. "I'm so sorry, I'm so new." "It's fine," I said, standing. My Aunt C's eyes tracked my movement and sharpened. "I know the place." The hallway behind the kitchen was a different country. The air was thicker, the lights harsher. People moved with the urgent ballet of survival. I found the storage closet because I had memorized the map of this building the way some people memorize poetry, and I rolled a rack of flutes out on a squeaky wheel. A dishwasher pushed through the swing door with a rack of plates, shoulders hunched from 1,000 nights like this one. "You're a gem," he said, and I liked him for it. Elliot saw me with the flutes, and his mouth twisted. "Guests aren't permitted back here." "Then don't seat them in the hallway," I said, not stopping. He didn't have an answer for that. By the time the flutes reached the tables, the toasts had already been prolonged into an intermission of people telling the same story in 10 variations. The MC thanked the vendors with the careful air of a man announcing sponsors. He said the name of the florist and the planner and the band and the pastry chef. When he thanked the venue, he said it like a brand, Hawthorne Manor, like whiskey, and the room hummed approval. My pulse threw itself against my wrist like it was testing a fence. I found my phone in my bag. I opened the email again. The deed glowed back. Sable and Pine LLC, owner of record. I thought of the boiler I had already scheduled to be replaced. I thought of repainting a broiler suite so it didn't make every complexion look like it had died an hour ago. I thought of staff training that started with human beings and not plates. I thought of my sister's face when she realized she could come here forever. From the head table, the groom's mother's voice sliced the air. "We need to move 3 seats to the front," she was saying to the planner. "A donor came. We can take them from the back." Her eyes skimmed the room like a hawk. "There," she pointed. "That table by the service door. By the kitchen." "Those are their family," the planner said. Calm, trained, trying. "They can be family from closer to the door," the groom's mother said. She looked at me and her smile was identical to her son's when he was performing charm. "You don't mind, do you? It's just seating." "No," I said, "it's not just seating." My mother materialized at her side like a shadow. "Marin," she said in a hush, "that really was a warning. Be gracious." Something very quiet inside me stood up. "I'm done," I said, and the words didn't feel like a flare-up or a tantrum.
They felt like a key turning. I walked past the tables, past the band tuning a saxophone with slow concentration, past the planner pressing 2 fingers to her temple to hold the headache in. I walked into the corridor again and turned left instead of right. At the end of the hall was the manager's office, Elliot's office for now, and I walked in and shut the door behind me. He looked up, startled, then irritated. "This is a staff area." "It is," I said. "Sit down."
"You can't sit," I said, and because I used the tone the building itself would eventually learn, he sat, more from reflex than agreement. I placed my phone on the desk, opened to the email, and slid it across to him. "What is this?" he said, but not like a question. Then his eyes flicked down, caught the words, and widened. He read again. He swallowed. His hand went to his tie like it had suddenly become a snake. "We had an understanding with the owner," he said faintly. "You had an understanding with the previous owner," I said. "This morning, the deed recorded. Hawthorne Manor belongs to Sablin Pine, LLC. I tapped the screen. That is my company." He stared at me like he was trying to rearrange his memory and couldn't find the instructions. What? "I'm not here to humiliate you," I said, and meant it. "I'm here to set a standard. I asked you to clear the exit. You argued. You put a staff table by a swinging door and hid extra napkins under it. You sent a new server to ask a guest to fetch glassware because you didn't want the Barlows to see the back of house. That last one makes me tired." His mouth opened and closed. He looked like a purse clasp. "We have an event," he said finally, as if reminding me. "A major event. You can't just walk in and—" "I can," I said gently, "and I am." I picked up my phone, pulled up my attorney's number, then paused before calling. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop service for 15 minutes. You're going to clear the blocked exits. You're going to move the staff seating to a location that isn't a violation and isn't humiliating for anyone's sister. You're going to check on your dishwasher because he looks like he's about to pass out. Then you're going to invite your team to drink water. We'll get complaints. The Barlows. Glests," I said, "not gods." He pressed his palm to his forehead like he was trying to keep something from escaping. "And if I don't, then I'll cancel the event," I said, "and I will do it kindly, but I will do it." For a second, there was silence so loud it felt like a siren in another room. Then I turned and left before he could gather his face into the expression men use when they want you to know they are mad at themselves for needing your direction. Back in the ballroom, the band was launching into the first dance. Lila and Graham turned in a circle of powdery light, their hands at each other's backs like wings. I stood to the side and felt the math of this place click into columns. The building had a history of men thinking they owned it because they owned the voice that carried in its rooms. That history ended today. I found the planner. "We're stopping service for 15 minutes. She blinked. "We can't." "We can. We have to. We have to adjust some things for safety. It will be smoother after." "Who authorized?" "I did." I looked her in the eye until she understood this wasn't improvisation. It was a plan. She lifted her mic, her voice low and even. There is a tone people use when they hear an instruction that's impossible, but also true. I heard it ripple through the staff. I watched a server pour confidence into someone else's glass. I watched Elliot walk to the bandstand and speak to the MC. The MC's mouth made a perfect O. Then he nodded, and when the song ended, he stepped to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a brief pause in service for a couple of adjustments, and then we'll be right back with the next course." The room murmured. The word pause arrived like a bee into a jar. The groom's mother stood. "What is this?" she asked the air, and then because no one else was brave enough to answer, she asked me. "What is this?" "A pause, so we can keep you safe." "Ridiculous," she said. "Graham." Graham looked at me like people look at a sign they didn't know they needed until the weather changes. "Is there a problem?"
Just an adjustment. 5 doors shouldn't be blocked at a wedding. My mother's hand closed around my wrist. Stop, she whispered with a fervor that had less to do with doors and more with power. You are making a scene. No, I said, and untangled my hand gently. I'm making a decision. The band softened to silence. Staff moved like a tide in reverse, redirecting, lifting. I walked to the nearest exit and asked a cousin to move his chair so the door would open all the way. He did, baffled but obedient, because when someone asks you to choose safety, you say yes even if you'd planned a different evening. Then I realized all at once, and with surprising clarity, that the change I wanted wasn't just about doors or chairs. It was about how many times in a lifetime a person gets to insist that dignity is part of the price of any party. Marin, Lila said, emerging from a knot of relatives as if from a wilder sea. Her veil had migrated slightly, giving her a crooked halo. What's happening? I took both her hands. Her fingers were cold and damp and electric. I love you, I said. You know that, right? I do, she said, eyes searching my face. But what? I wanted tonight to be perfect for you. Not perfect like catalog perfect, perfect like a place that is yours. But I think I can't give you that unless I'm willing to break the shape of what's already hurting us. Her brow furrowed. Marin, you're scaring me. Don't be scared, I said, and kissed her cheek. It tasted like setting powder and salt. Then I walked to the stage, to the place where the microphone waited like a narrow gate. The MC tried to intercept me, but there are moments when one person is the river and everyone else is stones. I lifted the mic and heard the room's hum drop like a curtain. Hi, I'm Marin, Lila's sister. I'm sorry for the interruption. We're making a change. Sit down, my mother hissed, as if we were in church and there were rules about who could stand. I looked at Lila. I looked at the exits, at the servers, at Elliot still at the edge of the room, looking like someone had replaced his clipboard with the fish. I looked at the place cards, at the way my name didn't appear where it should have. I thought about a deed with my name on it, and what my name meant here. We're canceling this event, I said, into the blue air that had turned electric. The first sound was the gasp. Then the second was a chair leg screeching against wood. Then 1,000 thoughts at once, everything in the room trying to become one decision.
You. I let the last syllable fade under the chandeliers and lowered the microphone only enough to feel the weight of it, cool and certain against my palm. Sound pooled and swirled. People turned to each other the way birds shift direction all at once when a shadow crosses the field. I could see my mother's mouth forming my name, as if she could put it back inside me and close my lips with 2 neat fingers. I could see Graham calculating, the quick shudder of a man trying to decide which version of himself would be most useful now. And I could see Lila, my sister, my favorite argument, my first audience, standing with her bouquet like a torch that had suddenly become too heavy. I need everyone to step outside onto the terrace for a breath, I said. Voice steady, not a tremor. We'll bring you right back, I promise. I didn't look at my mother because I didn't want her face to teach my voice doubt. Staff, take a pause. Water, air, then we reset. Absolutely not, Graham's mother said, rising as if the floor owed her its knees. This is unacceptable. We have a schedule. She looked at the planner as if the planner were a remote and she could press the channel back to her show. Shut that off. She met my microphone. The planner lifted a hand to her earpiece, eyes flicking between us as though she'd been asked to pick a religion on a Tuesday. Elliot, at the far edge of the room, started toward the stage with the look of a man who intends to remove something from a mouth it doesn't belong in. Elliot, I said, meeting his eyes. 15 minutes. A beat. Please. He stopped. His fingers tightened on the clipboard. He looked at the exits, clear now, because the chairs had been shifted, and then at the back doors where I knew the hallway pitched into heat and clang. 15, he said to his team, voice low but decisive. Water breaks, reset the floor as marked. He swallowed and added, leave the doors unobstructed.
The groom's mother stared at him as if he'd just taken off a mask in a play and revealed the wrong actor. "Who do you think you are?" she hissed. Elliot's throat bobbed. He said, "Following instruction." He didn't say whose. The band, caught between party and pause, let the last chord of the song ring into something kind. The MC, who had the wide, soft eyes of a deer accustomed to traffic, took the mic back from me and said in his smooth, airport voice way, "Folks, we're going to enjoy this beautiful evening air for a few while the team makes some adjustments to keep everything running smoothly. Head right through the terrace doors. We'll gather you again shortly." A murmur became movement. Chairs scraped, silk whispered. People did the thing people do when asked to rearrange themselves. They made it about themselves. Who grabbed whose hand? Who finished their drink? Who said, "It'll be fine," and who said, "Can you believe this?" Leela appeared at my elbow with such suddenness, I could have sworn she stepped out of me. Her fingers found my wrist and pressed as if confirming I was made of the same material I'd been made of an hour ago. "What are you doing?" she said, each word quiet and sharp as a pin. Not a scream, not a scene, a needlework question. "I'm stopping it before it hurts," I said. "I'll fix it." "Fix what?" she asked, and the word "what" trembled like it wanted to be 1,000 other nouns. "The way they were using this place to measure you. The doors, the tables, my wedding," she said, and there it was. The noun. "Yes," I said, "your wedding. I'm not ending that. I'm ending the other thing." I gestured to the head table with its cathedral of glassware. "Give me 15 minutes. "It's not a haircut," she said. "It's my life." "I know," my voice softened without my permission, "and I want your life to start with a room that treats you like the center of it." She stared at me. Her eyes, brown and bright and infuriatingly young even when she was right, went glossy. "I wore this dress so you wouldn't see the seams, and now all anyone sees is the seam you ripped." "I'll stitch it back," I said. "Let me." Graham slid in like a comment someone didn't ask for. He put his hand on Leela's back and said, with the careful charm of a man who thinks tone can rearrange outcomes, "We should keep this moving, right? People are—" He gestured toward the terrace, where guests were already lifting their phones like torches, ready to illuminate their place in the story online. "We will," I said, "after we move a few chairs and the head table, and the idea that money buys decency." "You think you can talk to my mother like that?" His smile didn't move. His eyes did. "I think I can talk about what's happening, and I think you can decide if you want to be part of the version that's kinder." "Marin," my mother said, arriving as if her heels were magnets and I was the only piece of metal worth finding, "you will stop, right now. You are humiliating us." She didn't whisper. She spoke in that polished, private school register that makes the insult sound like a lesson. "I'm protecting us," I said. "You just don't like my method." "Of course I don't like your method," she snapped. "Your method is fire." "My method is air. Everyone out, breathe, come back, and no one's elbow gets hit by a door for 3 hours. Please." For a second, I saw her consider me. I saw her look past the front I'd always worn for her and search for the child who'd taken apart the toaster to see how bread became morning. She must have found only metal. She set her mouth in a line that made me want to press my finger against it and smudge it just to prove that even marble lips are skin. "You will apologize to the Barlows, and you will say you were overwhelmed, and then you will sit." Behind us, Theo, the too-big vest server with the safety pin tattoo, appeared with a crate of water bottles and a courage that didn't match his uniform. "Water?" he asked the line of caterers, the band, a table of cousins, my mother. No one took one. I did. I cracked the cap and handed it to Leela. She didn't take it either. Not yet. "Mom," I said, "I'm not apologizing for making sure the room's exits are clear." "This isn't about exits," she said. "It is to me," I said. "It is to anyone who has ever had to find a door out of a bad room." Elliot approached, clipboard like a shield. "We're resetting the floor plan," he said, professional again. "We'll rotate the head table 90 degrees, open a lane behind it, remove the staging bin, and move the 2 rear tables to the terrace for overflow." He looked at me, then at the line of people overhearing. He chose his words carefully. Per instruction. Graham's mother actually laughed. The sound was bright and dry like cut glass catching light. "Per whose instruction?" she asked, without pretending politeness. Elliot glanced at me. I didn't nod. I didn't need to. He squared his tie. "Per the venue." "You're the venue?" she said to him, feigning surprise. "I wasn't aware we were in your living room." "The venue speaks through staff. We'll be as quick as we can." I watched him walk away and realized he had chosen a side. Not mine, exactly. A version of a room where people who worked hard got to work right. "Everybody out," the MC called again, more gently. "Enjoy the sunset. It's a good one." He wasn't wrong. The sky had poured itself into peaches and copper, as if the day had decided to make it easier to forgive the day by flattering itself. Guests drifted, some didn't. Older relatives clung to chairs like rafts. The Barlow's donor friends congregated into a planet with its own gravity, its own weather, its own belief system. "Go," I said to Leela. "Breathe." When she didn't move, I added, "Please." "If I go, will the room be different when I come back?" "Yes," I said. "Different in a way that will make you feel like the room knows your name." She searched my face for a lie. She didn't find one. 5 minutes, she said. Not 15. 10, I said. We'll split the difference. She almost smiled. Fine. She turned to Graham. Come on. He hesitated. We should talk to my mom. We should breathe, Leela said. And because she was still the center of the thing that mattered, he obeyed. As the room emptied, the staff unclenched. People joke about a room exhaling. Here it actually did. The kitchen door swung on its hinge and then stayed still like a metronome finding the tempo and then taking a nap. Theo handed out water to his own first. The dishwashers, the guy elbow-deep in ice, the woman with a burn on the soft web between thumb and forefinger, before passing the rest to guests who suddenly discovered they were thirsty.
"I'm supposed to be invisible," Theo said to me as we crossed paths. "Feels weird to be seen." "Get used to it," I said. "At least tonight." In the lull, my phone vibrated. A text from my attorney blinking like a lighthouse. Confirmed with county. Recording visible. Congrats. Do not let anyone bully staff. Call if needed. I thumbed back. Understood. I walked the perimeter of the ballroom with a roll of blue painter's tape I'd stolen from the AV cart and marked a discreet box on the floor where servers could stand to pivot without running into chairs. I tugged the table by the kitchen 2 inches toward the column and watched a path appear like a secret sidewalk. I pulled the gray tub of extra napkins out from under the linen and sent it to storage with a server who looked relieved not to be hiding anything anymore. I asked the band to move their speakers off the emergency lighting panel because someone had decided equipment deserved electricity more than people did. "Who are you?" the drummer asked. Not unfriendly, simply curious. "Someone who wants your life to be easier," I said. "You'll sound better if you don't trip your own cable." He grinned. "Is that true for people too?" "Always," I said. In the corridor, Elliot cornered me with a look that made me remember his tie-strangling gesture from earlier and understand the line he was traveling between old ways and new work. "I don't know who you are, but I can guess." I didn't make him guess. I pulled the email up and let him read just enough. His mouth tightened. Respect arrived in his eyes like a shy animal that had decided I could be trusted not to chase it. "All right," he said. "We'll do it right." He lifted his chin, a small defiance toward the men in cufflinks who had been treating him like furniture. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about the door seat. It's how it's been done." I said, "It's how it was done." Past tense. The terrace pulsed with the strange energy of people who have been interrupted in their performance of joy and are now being asked to improvise the feeling rather than pose it. I heard a cousin tell another cousin, "Only Marin." And for once, it didn't sound like a curse. It sounded like a fact that might be useful.
When the room was reset, I stood by the terrace doors and waited for the MC to do his gentle sheepdog work. He lifted his mic, his smile genuine. "Friends and family, whenever you're ready, we'd love to welcome you back for dessert and dancing. You're going to love how it looks." Graham's mother beat him to the threshold. She positioned herself like a dam and called, "We are not re-entering until we have an apology." Her voice was so controlled it had stopped being a voice and become architecture. My mother moved toward her, a strange alliance from women who otherwise only agreed on the color of navy, and for a moment I saw what power looks like when it tries to remind a room of its old rules. Lila's face, behind them, bouquet lowered, veils slightly askew, was pale with the effort of holding too many understandings at once. I stepped forward. "I'll apologize," I said, "to the people who were seated by a door that could have hurt them, to the people who were working without water, to anyone who thought tonight was supposed to be about whose name was closest to the head table, instead of whose heart was closest to the bride's." I looked at Lila. "I'm sorry for not warning you. I am not sorry for the reset. You're grandstanding, and you have no authority." She smiled then, a long legal smile. "This reception is under contract with Hawthorne Manor, not with whatever you think you are." Elliot stepped up beside me, his clipboard now a badge. "Ma'am, as the venue representative, I can assure you the facility has the authority to pause service for safety and operational adjustments at any time." He didn't look at me when he spoke. He looked at her. It mattered. She faltered. "Not much. Enough." "Let's go back inside," Lila said, voice small but correctly aimed. "Please." No one, even money, argues with a bride who says please like that. The dam cracked. People flowed. The room did look different. Not dramatically. Not the kind of change that would let someone take credit cheaply. The head table rotated, broke the invisible fence it had made. The two back tables relocated to the terrace, made space for a small, unassuming lounge near the band where staff could set things down without kneeling. The doors were clear. The aisle had a little curve to it now, a path that felt like a thought instead of a command. Lila took it in. Her shoulders dropped the smallest measurable distance. "Okay," she said, like a verdict she could live with. We restarted. The MC welcomed them again, as if the night had been born twice. The band found a happy key and let it hold. Servers moved like they'd done this 1,000 times in a better world. People laughed at the same volume they had laughed before, but the pitch had changed. It wasn't performative. It had a little relief in it. I sat, not at table 14, not even near a door. I didn't sit at the head table either. I took a chair at a table that had no number card because it had been created for this moment, a quick assembly of linen and possibility near the dance floor where I could see the whole room without needing to be seen. Theo slid a plate of something lemony in front of me and murmured, "For the venue." It made me want to cry in a way that had nothing to do with the lemon. Graham toasted again, shorter this time. He was good at being brief when he had to be. He thanked the staff with a gaze that actually found their faces. He thanked the guests for an intermission we'll laugh about one day, and people laugh now because it felt assigned. He didn't thank me. It was fine. We were not trading kindnesses like baseball cards tonight. After dessert, when the first real dance began, not the performed one, the room started to forget itself and become an organism that moves on beat and breath. Cousins spun grandparents, someone's heels snapped with a sound like an oath. Two children played an earnest game of crawling under the tables and counting napkin hems. I found Lila on the edge of the dance floor, watching the planet she had just named with a new last name turn. She had taken off her shoes and was taller anyway. "Does it feel like yours?" I asked. She didn't look at me. "It feels like I can breathe." A beat. "That's close." "I'll take close," I said. She sipped water finally, the bottle I had handed her hours ago, or one like it, and winced. "I want it to feel like mine." "I could," I said before I could stop myself, "in a larger way than you think." She turned her head then. "What does that mean?" Not a question. A keyhole. I opened my mouth, then closed it, then opened it, like a fish that had just learned it was in a bowl. "Later," I said. "I don't want to add another seam. Maureen, don't you dare set my lungs on fire and then tell me to breathe later. I should have told her then. I should have put the deed in her hand between courses like a napkin. But giving a thing the wrong way can make it feel like the wrong thing. Give me a song, then come with me. She narrowed her eyes. One song.
The song was sweet and not smart. We let it be. When it ended, I led her not to the manager's office or the crowded terrace or the kitchen that had become a rest at last, but out the side door, along the path of crushed gravel where the lawn leaned toward the lake. The air smelled like cut grass and sugar. The moon had started to show its pale wrist above the trees. "Talk," she said. "I need you to know I didn't do this because of a chair," I said. "I did it because of 1,000 chairs. Because I've watched rooms decide who deserves to sit by doors and who deserves head tables. I've watched you be made smaller by managing everyone else's need to be large." She let the bouquet down by her feet. Her toes pressed into the grass like she was reminding the earth she was here. And I wanted today to start with a different rule, I said. I looked at the water because it was easier than her face. "I have something for you. It is both a gift and an apology for not trusting you with it sooner." "What is it?" I took out my phone and pulled up the email. The legal description glowed. The subject line did that small, smug thing subject lines do when they know they're the point. I put the phone in her hand, my heart hammering against my bones like it thought it had a door of its own. She read. She didn't breathe. She read again. She made a sound then, a small O that might have been air leaving or entering or both. "Marin," she said, are you—" "I closed last week," I said. "Today it recorded. Sable and Pine is mine. Which means—" I swallowed. "Which means Hawthorne Manor is mine." She lifted her gaze from the screen to my mouth, to my eyes, as if there were different answers printed on different parts of me. "You own this place." "I do." The words didn't feel like boast or confession. They felt like a floor I had finally put down where there had always been gravel. "And you didn't tell me?" she said, without accusation, which made it feel worse. "I wanted to tell you differently," I said. At the end, with a bow. "Here is your first day, and here is a place that will always be yours to come back to." But then, the door. "And you canceled my reception." "I canceled the way it was being held, not your night." She was silent long enough for the night insects to make a chorus of my mistake. Finally, "Why me?" "Because you are the person I want rooms to recognize. Because when I picture what this place could be, how it could hold people up instead of showing them where to stand, I see you walking through it like you are allowed." Her laugh was wet, like I am allowed. She looked back toward the windows where light and movement turned like a distant aquarium. "Do you know what it feels like to be a bride and feel like a guest?" "Yes, it looks like my place card by a kitchen." She wiped under one eye with the side of a finger. "And you think giving me a building will make that feeling go away?" "I think giving you a building will make a lot of other feelings possible. And I think it'll make me feel like I finally used what I've learned to do something that isn't just mine." She breathed. In and out. In and out. Then she handed the phone back, careful like it might shatter. "If this is real," she said, "then you didn't cancel my reception." She looked at me as if I were a door, and she was deciding whether to open me. "You canceled theirs." Theirs. The version where I am arranged around someone else's name. The version where a donor gets my chair. I didn't realize until that second that I had been waiting for her to say something that would unlatch the last locked thing in me. That was the sentence. The click was audible in the sense of my head. We started back toward the terrace. On the path, we nearly collided with Graham and his mother, who had clearly come searching, not for us precisely, but for control. Graham smiled like a politician who has found a baby and isn't sure whether to kiss it or pass it to an intern. His mother didn't smile at all. "There you are," Graham said. "We were worried." He didn't sound worried.
He sounded like he had been practicing a speech and wanted an audience. "We were talking," Lila said, "about the room." His mother's eyes found my phone in my hand, the way a hawk finds a mouse. "If you're calling lawyers, I can save you the fee," she said. "We have the contract. Any interruption in service is a breach. We can sue this place into mulch." "I would love for you not to threaten to mulch where I'm standing," I said. "It's rude to the grass." She ignored me. "Graham, go tell the band we're shortening the set. We'll move the after-party to the hotel." "No," Lila said. "Babe?" "No," she said again, clearer. "We're staying." She lifted her chin. "We're finishing here." His mother drew herself taller, which was impressive considering her height and her heels and the scaffolding of her certainty. "You don't get to decide that," she said. Lila smiled, not the sweet smile she'd been practicing, not the public smile, the real one, the one she only used on me when we were both too tired to pretend we weren't children of the same house. "I do," she said. "It's my wedding. If this were your wedding, you would have behaved like someone ready for the responsibility that comes with our name." She cut a look at me, sharp enough to trim hedges. "Instead, you've let your sister turn it into a game." "Not a game," I said. "A correction." Graham made a small, conciliatory noise, like a waiter apologizing for the fish. "Let's not do this out here," he said. "People are watching." "They are. And I want them to watch me say that I am not moving to a hotel because someone with a checkbook wants my chair to look a certain way." He exhaled through his nose. "This isn't the time. It's the time I have." We left them in the path's fork, the noise of the party drawing us like a tide. At the terrace doors, my mother waited with a face like a drawing of a face. "Well," she said, when we were close enough for well to have a target. "Are we finished with our episode?" "We're finished with the pause. We're starting the part where it feels good again." "For whom?" she asked. "For the person whose name is on the invitation." I touched Lila's elbow. "You ready?" She nodded. "I'm ready." Then to me, low, "If this is your building, act like it honors me." We walked in. The band found their breath and blew it into brass. People clapped in that messy, generous way that makes the clapping itself a kind of apology for having doubted the night's capacity to go well. I went to the stage and caught the MC's sleeve. One announcement, short, from me. He assessed my face and decided he trusted it. He handed me the mic and stepped back half a step, the kind of deference that isn't submission, but clear-eyed permission. "Hi again," I said into the soft blue of the room. "Thank you for letting us reset." I looked at Lila and Graham, standing together in a light that made them look like the idea of a couple. From here on, there's one rule. If you think something will make the bride feel more like the center of this room, do it. If it won't, don't. Laughter, small and real. "And second," I said, and the words felt like they were walking to the edge of a board over a bright lake, ready to jump. "Tonight is not about donors or head tables, or who got the most inches of glassware. Tonight is about Lila." I breathed. "I'll have more to say later." I glanced at my mother, at Graham's mother, at Elliot, at Theo, at the door that now swung open and shut with a soft, satisfied sound. "For now, please, dance." I gave the mic back. The band understood the assignment. They summoned a song that pulled people up by their second spine, the one music coils around. The floor filled. The room forgot its earlier shape and became a new one built from laughter, with scaffolding of forgiveness.
The song was sweet and not smart. We let it be. When it ended, I led her not to the manager's office or the crowded terrace or the kitchen that had become a rest at last, but out the side door along the path of crushed gravel where the lawn leaned toward the lake. The air smelled like cut grass and sugar. The moon had started to show its pale wrist above the trees. "Talk," she said. "I need you to know I didn't do this because of a chair," I said. "I did it because of 1,000 chairs. Because I've watched rooms decide who deserves to sit by doors and who deserves head tables. I've watched you be made smaller by managing everyone else's need to be large." She let the bouquet down by her feet, her toes pressed into the grass like she was reminding the earth she was here. And I wanted today to start with a different rule," I said. I looked at the water because it was easier than her face. "I have something for you. It is both a gift and an apology for not trusting you with it sooner. What is it? I took out my phone and pulled up the email. The legal description glowed. The subject line did that small smug thing subject lines do when they know they're the point. I put the phone in her hand, my heart hammering against my bones like it thought it had a door of its own. She read. She didn't breathe. She read again. She made a sound then, a small oh. That might have been air leaving or entering or both. Marin, she said, are you? I closed last week, I said. Today it recorded. Sable and Pine is mine. Which means, I swallowed, which means Hawthorne Manor is mine. She lifted her gaze from the screen to my mouth to my eyes as if there were different answers printed on different parts of me. You own this place. I do. The words didn't feel like boast or confession. They felt like a floor I had finally put down where there had always been gravel. And you didn't tell me, she said. She said it without accusation, which made it feel worse. I wanted to tell you differently, I said, at the end with a bow. Here is your first day, and here is a place that will always be yours to come back to. But then, the door. And you canceled my reception. I canceled the way it was being held, not your night. She was silent long enough for the night insects to make a chorus of my mistake. Finally, why me? Because you are the person I want rooms to recognize, I said. Because when I picture what this place could be, how it could hold people up instead of showing them where to stand, I see you walking through it like you are allowed. Her laugh was wet, like I am allowed. She looked back toward the windows where light and movement turned like a distant aquarium. Do you know what it feels like to be a bride and feel like a guest? Yes, it looks like my place card by a kitchen. She wiped under one eye with the side of a finger. And you think giving me a building will make that feeling go away? I think giving you a building will make a lot of other feelings possible. And I think it'll make me feel like I finally used what I've learned to do, something that isn't just mine. She breathed, in and out, in and out. Then she handed the phone back, careful, like it might shatter. If this is real, then you didn't cancel my reception. She looked at me as if I were a door and she was deciding whether to open me. You canceled theirs. Theirs? She said the version where I am arranged around someone else's name, the version where a donor gets my chair. I didn't realize until that second that I'd been waiting for her to say something that would unlatch the last locked thing in me. That was the sentence. The click was audible in the sense of my head. We started back toward the terrace. On the path, we nearly collided with Graham and his mother, who had clearly come searching, not for us precisely, but for control. Graham smiled like a politician who has found a baby and is not sure whether to kiss it or pass it to an intern. His mother didn't smile at all. There you are, Graham said. We were worried. He didn't sound worried. He sounded like he had been practicing a speech and wanted an audience. We were talking, Leela said, about the room. His mother's eyes found my phone in my hand, the way a hawk finds a mouse. If you're calling lawyers, I can save you the fee. We have the contract. Any interruption in service is a breach. We can sue this place into mulch. I would love for you not to threaten to mulch where I'm standing. It's rude to the grass. She ignored me. Graham, go tell the band we're shortening the set. We'll move the after party to the hotel. No, Leela said. Babe! No, she said again, clearer. We're staying. She lifted her chin. We're finishing here. His mother drew herself taller, which was impressive considering her height and her heels and the scaffolding of her certainty. You don't get to decide that, she said. Leela smiled. Not the sweet smile she'd been practicing, not the public smile, the real one, the one she only used on me when we were both too tired to pretend we weren't children of the same house. I do, she said. It's my wedding. If this were your wedding, you would have behaved like someone ready for the responsibility that comes with our name. She could have looked at me, sharp enough to trim hedges. Instead, you've let your sister turn it into a game. Not a game, a correction. Graham made a small, conciliatory noise like a waiter apologizing for the fish. Let's not do this out here. People are watching. They are, Leela said, and I want them to watch me say that I am not moving to a hotel because someone with a checkbook wants my chair to look a certain way. He exhaled through his nose. This isn't the time. It's the time I have, she said. We left them in the path's fork, the noise of the party drawing us like a tide.
At the terrace doors, my mother waited with a face like a drawing of a face. "Well," she said when we were close enough for well to have a target, "are we finished with our episode?" I said, "We're finished with the pause. We're starting the part that feels good again." "For whom?" she asked. "For the person whose name is on the invitation." I touched Leela's elbow. "You ready?" She nodded. "I'm ready." Then to me, low, "If this is your building, act like it honors me." We walked in. The band found their breath and blew it into brass. People clapped in that messy, generous way that makes the clapping itself a kind of apology for having doubted the night's capacity to go well. I went to the stage and caught the MC's sleeve. One announcement, short, from me. He assessed my face and decided he trusted it. He handed me the mic and stepped back a half step, the kind of deference that isn't submission but clear-eyed permission. "Hi again," I said into the soft blue of the room. "Thank you for letting us reset." I looked at Leela and Graham standing together in a light that made them look like the idea of a couple. From here, there's one rule. If you think something will make the bride feel more like the center of this room, do it. If it won't, don't. Laughter, small and real. "And second," I said, and the words felt like they were walking to the edge of a board over a bright lake, ready to jump, "tonight is not about donors or head tables or who got the most inches of glassware. Tonight is about Leela." I breathed. "I'll have more to say later." I glanced at my mother, at Graham's mother, at Elliot, at Theo, at the door that now swung open and shut with a soft, satisfied sound. "For now, please, dance." I gave the mic back. The band understood the assignment. They summoned a song that pulled people up by their second spine, the one music coils around. The floor filled, the room forgot its earlier shape, and became a new one built from laughter with scaffolding of forgiveness. I stepped down and felt the momentary relief of a runner who has decided they can, in fact, keep going. And then my mother took my arm, not hard, but with intention. "You will tell me what you have done," she said. "I'll tell you later," I said. "I need to. You will tell me now." Her nails pressed crescent moons into my skin through the dress. "What are you hiding?" "I'm not hiding," I said. "I'm holding. There's a difference." I disentangled myself. "Please, just enjoy this." "Enjoy what?" she asked, and her voice almost broke on the last word because she is, despite everything, a person with a throat. "Enjoy your daughter," I said. "Enjoy the room not trying to bruise her." "Rooms don't bruise," she said automatically. "Then why do so many shoulders carry marks?" I said, and left her with that. I found Elliot again near the band, where he was, to his credit, apologizing to a trumpet about the earlier electricity panel incident. "One more thing," I said. "I need a folder, something simple. Office, top drawer, left." He paused. "Are we announcing something?" "Not yet. Soon." On my way, I nearly collided with Tio carrying a tray above his head like a tent. Underneath it, Omar, the dishwasher, walked with his head tipped back, laughing at something Tio had said to make him keep walking. It made me so stupidly happy I almost forgot what I was doing. In the office, I opened the drawer and found a cream folder with Hawthorne embossed in the top right corner, in a font that wanted to be a crest when it grew up. I slid my printed copy of the recording confirmation inside, the one I'd brought, because hope is a habit if you practice. I stood with the folder in my hands and listened to the bass thump through the walls like a heart reminding a body who's in charge. When I turned back toward the ballroom, Graham was there in the doorway, leaning against the jamb like men do when they want their body to make a conversation feel casual that is not going to be casual. "Congratulations," he said. "You won the room." I said, "It isn't a contest." He said, "Everything's a contest," and smiled the way boys smile when they want to see if they can make you angry without giving you a reason to call them on it. My mother is, concerned. "She'll live." "You should know," he said, voice dropping, "that we put down a sizable deposit. If you've made the venue breach, we can pursue damages." "Are you threatening me?" I asked. He said, "I'm managing outcomes. It's what I do." I said, "You sell cars?" He said, "I run a network," as if network were a nobler word. "And you flip houses." I said, I build homes. It came out like steel laid on the road. He shrugged. At the end of the night, my family and I will decide whether what happened here was acceptable. I'm giving you a chance to make it look acceptable. He straightened. Consider putting your performance away. I said, it's away. We're dancing. He smiled again, thin as monofilament. Marin, he said almost kindly, remember who paid for the flowers. I watched him walk away and thought, not for the first time in my life, that money is a language some men speak so loudly they mistake volume for fluency. When I returned to the dance floor's edge, Leela was in the center of a circle of women who loved her, or loved who she was expected to be, or loved being near the center of any circle. She was laughing. It wasn't the loud laugh she uses for photos, it was the small one she uses for jokes that are truly funny. My shoulders lowered a degree I hadn't realized they'd been holding. I waited until the song ended, then sidled into the space between songs where announcements live. I touched Leela's arm. After the next, come with me. She nodded. 2 minutes. Those 2 minutes were long enough for my mother to find me again, for Graham's mother to corner my father and whisper with such intensity his tie actually tilted, for a cousin to slip me a napkin with the words, "What is happening?" written in lipstick like a note in a locker. When Leela reached me, I placed the folder against her palm. Hold, I said. Not yet. What is it? She asked, again that keyhole. A promise written down, with a map attached. We walked toward the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC said, catching me and stepping aside gracefully, the bride's sister has a word. I reached for the microphone. The room quieted in the way rooms do when they think gratitude is coming, or apology, or dessert. The folder in Leela's hand made a soft sound like fabric thinking about becoming a sail. My mother stood, Graham's mother stood, Graham did not. Elliot looked at me and gave the smallest nod a man can give and still have it count. Tio stopped mid-step at the edge of the dance floor and held perfectly still so his tray wouldn't tremble. The band leader rested his hand on the gold curve of his sax and waited. I drew breath. Leela touched my wrist. Wait, she said. And when I turned to her, her eyes were not glossy with fear anymore. They were clear. They were the eyes of a woman whose lungs belonged to her again. She lifted the folder slightly, enough that the light caught the embossed Hawthorne and turned it into the idea of a crown. If this is what I think it is, she said, voice low but aimed right at the middle of me, then I don't want you to make a speech. She held my gaze and went very still, the stillness of the moment before an arrow leaves the bow. I want you to do it. Do what? I asked, even though I knew. Make this place mine. Her words landed in me like a door swinging open onto a room I had built without letting myself enter. For a heartbeat, the music, the lights, the conversations, the reputation of everyone in this room, all of it, narrowed to the space between her mouth and my answer. I looked at the folder, I looked at Leela, I looked at the room that had learned, in an hour, how to be gentler. The microphone weighed nothing in my hand now. The heavy thing was choice. Then say it, she whispered. Say it to them, say it to me. I lifted the microphone, the folder bright as a moon in my sister's hands, and took the breath I'd been saving since morning. And just as I opened my mouth to tell the room exactly what I intended to give, the ballroom doors at the back swung wide, and a voice cut through the music from the threshold, firm and amplified not by a microphone, but by the kind of confidence that isn't learned so much as inherited. Stop right there. Every head turned. Graham's mother stepped forward with a stack of papers and a man in a navy suit with a pin on his lapel, some corporate attorney conjured from the ether of her contact list. She lifted the papers like a priest lifts a wafer. This venue is under injunction pending a contractual review. She tapped the top page. If you proceed, you will be in contempt. The room held its breath, so hard I thought it might pass out. I smiled then, not big, not mean, just the small smile of a woman who has finally learned the difference between a wall and a curtain. 2 more minutes, I murmured to Leela, my mouth near her ear. Marin, she said, and in her voice was the past and the possible and the thing we were about to become. I faced the attorney, the papers, the old rules parading as laws, and I lifted the microphone until it hummed. "I hear you," I said. I reached for the folder, and I opened my mouth to answer.
And I opened my mouth to answer. I didn't raise my voice. I only let it carry, the way a hand carries a glass full to the lip when the room is moving. "Sir," I said to the man with the navy suit and the pin that wanted to be a badge, "if that's an injunction, it will have a docket number, a judge's signature, and service recorded with the county clerk. May I see the judge's signature?" He hesitated. There it was, the half-second lag that separates threat from fact, then lifted the top page as if the signature might appear because I asked politely enough. Graham's mother stood beside him like a second spine, perfectly still. The page was a copy of the contract, not an order. Beneath it, a letter on firm letterhead, stern, expensive. No signature from a bench, only from a partner whose pen turned his own name into flourishes. "That is not an injunction," I said, gentle as I could. "That is a demand letter." I turned slightly, because this part was for the room, not for him. And while demand letters can be impressive, they are not law. "You have breached," Graham's mother said. "You paused service without authorization. I authorized it, and I am the authorization." I let that sit without ornament. "My name is Marin Calloway. Sable and Pine LLC is my company. This morning, the deed for Hawthorne Manor recorded in our name. We will, of course, honor every vendor's payable and every person's labor. We will also honor every guest's safety and dignity, which includes the dignity of the bride of record." The sound in the room didn't swell. It settled, like silt in a jar. People looked to their phones and then looked up again, recognizing that the thing was happening in the air, not on a screen. The attorney recovered his voice first. "Ownership is not the same as privity of contract," he said. "The Barlow's agreement is with the venue entity, not with you personally. Any unilateral modification exposes the venue to damages." "You're right," I said, "which is why the venue entity is here, speaking through its authorized representative." I tipped my head toward Elliot, who didn't flinch. "We're not modifying. We're concluding the Barlow's control of the floor plan and continuing the celebration at the invitation of the bride. The kitchen will continue to serve, the band will continue to play, the staff will be continued to be paid, overtime included. The deposit will be honored and excess will be refunded." "You can't just take it," Graham's mother snapped. "I'm not taking anything. I am returning something." I looked at Leela, to its center. "Marin," my mother breathed, a warning and a wound stitched into one word. "Stop!" I reached for my phone and hit the first favorite, Avery, my attorney, then pressed the speaker icon because there are times when private truth needs a public shape. The call picked up on the second ring over the background hiss of a car's AC. "Do not be on speaker," Avery said dryly, which made two servers snort into their sleeves. "You are," I said. "Hello. Could you please confirm whether the venue is permitted to pause service for safety and operational adjustments?" "Yes," Avery said instantly. "Also, hi everyone. If someone is waving a letter and calling it an injunction, it isn't unless you also see a judge's signature and docket number. Happy wedding." There was a ripple of laughter, the kind that breaks a tension just enough to let breath in. "And Avery," I added, "please remind me of the status of the deed." "Recorded," she said. "Sable and Pine, LLC, sole member, you. Any assignment paperwork we discussed is in the folder I couriered. Recordation for those will be Monday when the clerk's window opens." "Thank you," I said, and ended the call because the point wasn't to bludgeon, it was to anchor. Graham's mother drew herself taller, impressive, considering the height she already had. "You will regret this," she said. It wasn't a threat so much as a prophecy she'd married to her reflection for years. "I regret," I said, and felt the truth of it cut clean, "that I didn't tell my sister sooner." I turned to Leela, and in that turn arranged the rest of my life. "This is for you." I took the cream folder, the one with Hawthorne embossed in the corner, from her hand,
lifted the flap, and slid the top document free. I didn't have to look. I'd read it 10 times in the last 24 hours. Assignment of membership interest, Sable and Pine LLC, to Chrysanthemum Trust, with beneficiary Leela Barlow as sole beneficiary and managing trustee. I will stay on to manage operations for a year, if the trustee wants me. After that, she can fire me if I've been a pain. A sound moved through the room that I can only call a human weather. Surprise, then joy, then the warm rain of relief from people who love you even when they don't know how to stand near a microphone. Leela didn't take the paper. She took my hand. Her palm was cooler now, the way a fever breaks and leaves the skin damp and sane. She bought me a building, she said. I bought you a key. The building comes with it. Graham was smiling again, but the smile had numbers in it. That's incredible, he said, already narrating the press release he would write in his head. We can expand the brand. Barlow at Hawthorne has a ring to it. Don't rename my sister, I said, without looking at him. He closed his mouth so fast I felt the current from it. Graham's mother recovered in a different direction. This is a stunt, an expensive one. You're manipulating a young woman on her wedding night. By giving her a building, Theo muttered from the edge of the dance floor, and someone, Aunt Claire, actually clapped her fingertips once at that. I am giving her authority, I said. She can decline it. She can tell me to shred this right now, and I will. I put the pen on the folder. But if she wants it, she has it, with those terms. I nodded at the second document. Staff first, doors unblocked, 12 community days a year where couples who can't afford a place like this get one anyway, and a scholarship fund for hospitality apprenticeships named for our grandmother because she taught us how to feed a table that kept growing. That tore something in my mother. I saw it. Her face faltered, the small collapse you might miss unless you loved her even when it was hard. Our grandmother had been her softest memory, and hearing that name punctured the shell she wore for company. She sat down because her knees told her to. Leela didn't make me wait. She lifted the pen and signed where the tabs told her to sign. The room made a sound I had never heard a room make, like breath and applause had a child. I felt a sting behind my ribs and knew it for what it was. Not regret, relief. Okay, Leela said, looking up into the cross beams and chandeliers as if she could see the history caught there. Okay, she turned toward the crowd, toward the people who had been trying to read our faces since the doors opened. We're staying, we're dancing, and we're going to do it in a place that is ours. She looked at the staff, not in general, at them. Please take breaks, please eat. If you need anything, you come to me.
Trustee perks, Theo murmured, grinning, and this time a server didn't bother to hide her laugh. You can't be serious, Graham's mother said, soft now, because anger hadn't worked and soft had been useful for her in other rooms. You will embarrass us. Mom, Graham said, not looking at her. Let it go. She stared at him. The shape of the world she had drawn and redrawn for herself was becoming uncooperative. We will discuss this later, she said, edge back in place. She looked at me. You have made an enemy. That was the moment I could have been cruel. I could have said any number of true things in a way that would have made her smaller. I did not. I don't want enemies, I said. I want doors. I gestured around us. Pick one. Walk through. Stay if you want, or go. We'll send cake. She held my gaze a beat too long, then turned on a heel that cost more than my first set of wrenches, and left with 3 people who wanted to believe the night had been ruined because they had not ruined it themselves. Others followed, because crowds are rivers, and some people prefer the part that runs downhill. But most stayed. They didn't cheer those who left or those who stayed. They just chose. The band picked up something bright, by instinct, not direction. And the floor filled the way floors fill when people have permission to be the version of themselves they claim in their mirrors. I stepped off the small stage and felt my legs say, "We can keep you now." Elliot was at my elbow a moment later, not breathless, but altered. "Congratulations," he said. "Boss?" He made the word a courtesy instead of a rank. "Only if you're willing,"
I said. I want to keep you. If you want to be kept. He nodded once, a man who had chosen to. I'll show up Monday with a map of the things that need fixing that no one outside the kitchen cares about, he said. And I'll bring coffee for Omar first. Deal. And hydration station is not optional. Water on every side station. Food for staff. Real food, not leftovers. His smile when it appeared made him look 10 years younger. Yes, ma'am. I turned and found my mother standing at the edge of the dance floor, not in navy anymore, but in the same navy, her hands clasped to keep them from learning a new habit without her permission. She didn't speak first. She watched Lila dance barefoot with a cousin, veil pinned with one rogue bobby pin that gave her a halo shaped like an idea. When you were 5, she said, you took apart the toaster. I did, I said, wary but open. I was furious. You could have burned the house down. I could have. I didn't. You put it back together. And she did something with her mouth I hadn't seen it do in public, a small, untrained smile. And the toast came out better after.
I am, I said. How's your night? Better, he said. Not loud. He gestured vaguely at the inside of his head. You make it quiet. Good, I said. Do you want another stool in here? He grinned. 2, he said, for my feet. Done, I said, absurdly happy to approve a stool like it was a bridge. In the corridor, Theo had taped a note above the service station. Drink water, breathe, you're a human. Someone had drawn a small waving hand beside it. Beside that, a plastic container of cut strawberries labeled, For Us. I almost cried over strawberries. I almost always cry when something small is so correct it makes a new rule for a room. When I came back to the ballroom, Leela caught my eye and beckoned me with her chin in a way that belonged to us since childhood. She pulled me into the middle of the floor, and the circle widened to accommodate us, because rooms become generous when you thank them for it. She did it, Aunt Claire said to no one in particular, and everyone in particular. We did it, Leela corrected. She pressed her forehead to mine for a second and said, I want the community days to start next month. I want people to know right away. Done, I said. Thursdays, 12 a year. We'll create an application so simple a tired person can fill it out with their thumb. And the apprenticeships, she said. Name the first one to Theo because he told me to drink water without making me feel like a project. Done, I said again, and realized I sounded like a hammer satisfied with a nail. Close to midnight, after cake had been eaten and shoes had been found and lost again, the MC gestured to me with a question shaped like a hand. I shook my head. No more speeches.
The room had heard enough words. It wanted the grammar of music and the punctuation of clinks and the long parenthetical sighs set in the dark margin of a lawn at the edge of a lake. Still, there were small conversations to be had, and they had themselves. I found Graham's mother once more on the terrace, looking at the black water as if it were a balance sheet. She didn't turn when I stepped beside her. "I didn't destroy anything," I said softly. "I rearranged who it served first." She didn't answer. Then, "You threatened to cancel the event." "I did," I said, "and I would have if it meant stopping the part that was unkind." I waited. "You could stay. You could help." She laughed once, not kindly. "I don't help," she said. "I direct." "I know," I said. "Perhaps there's a room where that works. This room is under new management.